anyways, okay, ROM stuff.
5 minutes ROM.
Okay.
Probably not.
5 minutes of just me doing ROM in the background.
Let's see if we can get through ROM investigation in 5 minutes. 5-minute request.
That's yeah, that'll take me that much time to read. But anyways, so one of the initial questions was from Bill Hiesel, talking about basically like ROM in the movement screen matching up with ROM in the throw. So, passive active in the movement screen with the actual stress metrics in the mocap throw. So that can be, elbow varus torque. I did elbow flexion torque, elbow varus torque, elbow pronation torque, shoulder horizontal adduction torque, shoulder adduction torques, and shoulder internal torque. Not too much there. I looked at like the normalized values too, which takes into account like body weight and height specifically to try to pair out like, some of the noise there. Not a ton there. I was looking specifically at follow-up questions from Dan Adams, where the idea was, I think, whether or not for the total passive range of motion, adding the both the dominant and non-dominant hand, the sweet spot being 165 to 187. So I was kind of splitting up stuff in buckets. I personally didn't find any inflection points with that in our stress metrics. I know he mentioned there being a few studies showing that as a potential injury risk. We didn't frame it exactly in terms of injury risk, but I didn't find any inflection point there in those numbers marking whether someone has higher or lower stress. That being said, this kind of bled into the other question asked from Terry about the shoulder strength, like active ROM numbers being an inflection point or something that influences whether or not people go on injury designations. So I looked at, people that are measured green elbow versus low shoulder, low elbow, low other, and found a couple interesting stuff. Specifically, and I kind of split it up by hands, and then by dominant, or I split it up by, shoulder strength, ER on the left side, shoulder strength, IR on the left side, and then on both counterparts on the right side.
And for reference, those are isometric strength values that we do in our assessments.
Yeah. And then I also classified each hand based on the dominant or whatever was a dominant side for the athlete. So I used like some people's ERL, some people's ERRs, and looked at like playing level splits as well, looking at the isometric strength on both the ER and IR. And I found a couple interesting things. Mostly the pro players tended to have higher values, and also the players that had no injury designations had higher values. The IR shoulder strength was actually flagged, and I'm talking here from here on out, I'm talking about for the dominant side of the athlete. The IR shoulder strength value was flagged as significant at a NOVA level for the pros. And it's actually something I talked to Lindley about yesterday as well, because back in the day, Lindley asked me about, because the general process when I'm looking at this, and I should honestly pull up what I told Lindley, because I did, or what I told Mike. So I was especially good at explaining it to Mike. But the idea is you run a NOVA for each comparison, and then if it's significant at a NOVA level, you're running like pairwise mean difference test. So a way to think about it is essentially that your good old fashioned t-test with a few adjustments to count for, running multiple tests at one time. So the ANOVA would tell me if a variable, in this case, like the dominant shoulder strength ER or IR, it results in significantly different means among the designated groups. So in this case, the groups were the injury designations, whether no injury, aka green elbows, or low shoulder on, low elbow on, so forth, among each of the playing levels. So I'm comparing pro green elbows to pro low elbow on versus pro low shoulder on. And in this example, on the pro level side of things, I found a NOVA to be significant for the IR strength, but when comparing the groups themselves, no actual comparison stood out as significant, which is unique, finding a ANOVA significant and not finding a pairwise difference to be significant. What it really means is the groups were definitely different when controlling for the dominant shoulder strength IR, but not so different that any one comparison stood out. On the other hand, on the college side of things, interestingly enough, I found ANOVA to be significant for the dominant shoulder strength ER, and I found some significant pairwise differences there as well. I found that the uninjured, I believe I found, let me look at it just to make sure I don't misspeak. Yeah, so people who were classified as green elbow, so again, no injuries, and low other on, which is a vague term for other injuries that don't have to do with the arm, had greater dominant shoulder strength ER than people that were classified with low elbow on for college. So what this really means, wrapping it up, I don't think these, the nuances in terms of the pairwise comparison between the pro playing level splits and the college playing level splits probably doesn't actually tell a specific story. I don't put too much basis in the fact that one found a pairwise comparison, one didn't. What it likely is probably just the size of the groups as well. I think there are probably more players with one of the injury designations and one of the pro versus college levels. I actually can look at it right now. So pro, this is across 417 pro players, 671 college players, and then one splitting it up among like those splits. I think the pros had like 360 green elbows, whereas the college players probably had like a larger chunk of people with the injury designations. So that helps kind of find statistically significant differences because the classes are more more balanced while still not completely balanced. But the main takeaway being, like I mentioned, the dominant isometric strength.
Isokinetic.
Yeah.
Biodex.
Well, I'm saying one of the things still on my list is matching this all up with Biodex.
Biodex data.
The isometric strength values probably do play a part in telling whether someone is either injured or soon to be flagged with an injury. Mm-hmm. And because again, that's how we're defining injured. After going through a PT assessment of Terry and being flagged as having low elbow on, low shoulder on, or low other on. Yeah. So that's probably my takeaway. What do you guys have any takeaways or specific, commentary or feedback?
I'd say that was pretty much what I was thinking too. When I was reading through it, I was gaining more and more excitement for the stuff that you had in brackets that was coming in part 2. Because I think like we were probably just like directionally thinking the same, or you putting those in there forced me to directionally think that way. And so I was like, oh yeah, that's like the next step I feel like, which would be really, really fire.
Yeah.
So.
And what are those next steps?
Matching the Biodex actual isokinetic values with some of the ROM values and seeing how that data set looks like, and then doing a larger part on bringing in kind of more features or columns for the injury predictors that like Terry essentially asked me to look into, like the variation and explaining those injury designations. So things like, because I was looking at ROM and biomechanics, like mocap joint kinetics, and then ROM and injury designations, and bringing in stuff like, the mocap joint kinetics to the injury designations, stuff I've done before, but essentially rerunning with a larger data set. Yeah. Actually bringing in wellness questionnaire feedback as well. So I think what I'm going to do for that, I actually started preparing this data set a little bit yesterday. I think what I'm going to do for that, and I'm curious if you guys have any questions or ideas, is I'm probably going to get the mean and variance of people's answers to our wellness questionnaire, which is stuff like, just ranking on a scale of 1 to 5. It's just you self answer how your diet was the night before, how your sleep was, how you're feeling, overall soreness, general muscle. I think that's probably all of them. You get like a total score, and then you fill that every day. So seeing if people can, if wellness questionnaire scores actually do help explain when someone's about to go on low other on, low elbow on, low shoulder on. And it's actually probably one of our largest data sets. Tens of thousands of people have answered, or tens of thousands of people's answers are in there. Probably thousands of people have answered, and some people have like hundreds of answers. Some people have just a few answers. And also